Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the United Front Football Podcast with me, Big Meaty, aka Dan, and M Breezy. Uh, welcome back. We had our week off, our recovery week after the European Championship final. It was definitely required to get over that heartbreak. Was it heartbreak? It was kind of. I'm a little bit. I'm a little bit sad because it kind of went exactly how I expected it to. Like I was hoping, maybe we can do that thing where we fight through and we can, get something going. But no, it was kind of like it went a little bit back to the rest of the tournament for form, didn't it? Obviously, did well in quotation marks to get to the final. I think it's just another example though of the England squad recently finally coming up against a team that's on the same level as them, and failing to kind of get over the line. I think it's been another favourable run to a final, and you can always argue like, well, they put themselves in the position to get to the final by topping the group and all that kind of stuff. But I think as a whole, for me, I don't know whether you fully agree, but I think the kind of the wider feeling is it was an underwhelming performance by England through the tournament. Played all right against the Netherlands side that I think were quite lucky to get to the semi-final themselves. No one expected them to get that far pre-tournament. And let's be honest, like no one really expected Spain to get that far into the final with the players that were missing, and it's a very young squad like in certain areas. But they consistently played the best football, didn't look scared, looked like they wanted to step up to the mark, and obviously, like we've previously discussed as well, played a much more open and dangerous style of football. Like they took risks where, the previous Spain squad in the mid 2000s, like 2010s, took very few risks. Like it was very like Pep Barcelona, minimal risk, but just dominate the ball. Defend possessions, the form of defense, and all that kind of stuff. You win it 1 or 2-0 because the other team can't have the ball. But man, they're an exciting team to watch, and some of those players are very, very fun, aren't they?
Yeah, they. I think it'd be incredibly difficult to argue against them being the worthy winners, across the entire tournament. It's probably quite, maybe not rare, but it's not always the case that a team is so clearly dominant from start to finish in a tournament and ends up going to win it. Like you usually see teams playing really well and then inexplicably falling at like the quarterfinals or the semi-final stages. Quite often it's not always the consistently best team that always wins it, but it would have been, I think you look at every team that played in the Euros this summer, especially as the tournament went on, where some teams started quite well, like Germany, I think a good example of that, started quite well, and they did. I felt they were quite underwhelming when they did lose to Spain in the quarterfinals, I think it was. You got teams like France who never really turned up. Obviously Austria played really well, but ended up going against Turkey and stuff. But yeah, Spain were, like I said, there wasn't a game of theirs that I watched where they weren't worthy winners, and it was the same for the final. They just completely controlled, dominated in every aspect, really, to a point where England couldn't really cope with it. But yeah, it's an exciting team for them, and like you say, got a lot of exciting players coming through. Obviously, Lamine Yamal being the big one, right? But Nico Williams again just continues to be, I think, sort of because of Yamal and the fact he was 16. Do you know what I mean? I think Williams kind of went under the radar a little bit. Not saying people thought he was bad or anything, but like it's kind of been like I think his overall performance has actually ended up being a little bit underrated. I thought he was exceptional. There's no wonder he's getting. There's no wonder that Barcelona want to bring him over there to link up with Yamal again. And they has probably the best midfield, like functioning midfield in the tournament as well, which I think ultimately made the difference. Which is really frustrating because I actually think England had the players to match that midfield. We just didn't play those players in the correct positions, and I think that's actually the big thing for Spain. Everyone who played in the position was a natural in that position. Do you know what I mean? Like, which sounds, yeah, of course, that's how it should be. But like I think in tournament football, international football, especially when you have such little time with the players, it's just getting everyone in a position they're comfortable with, and they know exactly what their job is. It can go such a long way, and you saw that. Like Marco Correa was brilliant. Obviously, Carvajal is a natural born winner with what he's done at Madrid. And like I say, that midfield trio of Rodri Fabian Ruiz and what ended up being Danny Olmo was just, like I say, it was the best midfield trio in the whole tournament, I thought.
That's the scary thing, actually, when you consider that that isn't probably their best midfield. When Gavi comes out injured, Pedri's obviously not getting into that squad because of injuries and issues. Like, they've got better players to come into that team as well. Like, so it just gives you that depth and rotation. So Sergio Busquets come off at half time, and I thought, right, finally we can like get a bit of a grip on the midfield. Rodri, sorry. Same player.
Region. He's a region.
It's basically the same player.
That's through from a loop there. I was like, I had a drink during the game. Was he playing?
Looking at your drink. Rodri obviously comes off, and I thought, right, finally we can kind of get a bit of a foothold on the game, because I thought first half England's midfield just couldn't really get on the ball. I think, Bellingham once again looked isolated out wide. Foden was getting squeezed out. Mainu just couldn't get the ball. Like, we just couldn't get the ball to Kobe Mainu, who's the one player in that midfield who can kind of beat a tackle and get the ball through the lines. I think Declan Rice completed one forward pass in the full 90 minutes. Like, he had a very poor tournament. And I thought when he came off, I thought finally we can get a bit of an impact on the game, and it just didn't happen. Spain just kind of kept dominating. Obviously, both teams scored. It looked like it was going to extra time, but then just a really good goal at the end, to be honest. Kyle Walker, I don't blame him for that, but I think
it's easy to, isn't it? Because he's the guy he's the guy, you know, who's meant to be shutting down the cross and stuff. But like, I think it's elevated, isn't it? Because he has, like, despite somehow making it into the fucking official team of the tournament, he had
which
a
is
really
baffling,
bad
by the way.
Yeah, insane. I don't think UEFA actually watch football, but
the only thing I can think with that is they went, we have to get an England player in here because they've made the final, and they've gone, well, what other right back can we choose? Like, because I think, I mean, you could have had Gahey in there. I think he was one of the better centre backs at the tournament. I mean, I'd obviously say Mainu because I'm a United fan, but I think the midfield, that Spain midfield, was better. Or Pickford, I thought Pickford had a really good tournament. But I think that really shows how underwhelming a lot of those England performances were. Like, we were going in saying, we've got Bellingham, we've got Kane, who just scored 45 goals, we've got Phil Foden, who's the best player in the Premier League, we've got Declan Rice, who's just changed Arsenal's midfield up. Like, we've got all these wonderful players, and basically none of them did anything other than 45 minutes against Serbia for Jude Bellingham, where he genuinely looked brilliant. 45 minutes against the Phil Foden. Other than that, the best players for England were the ones where there was question marks over him. I'm talking Mark Gahey. I think even though Trippier was getting kind of lambasted for not offering enough going forward, like, he did the job that was asked of him. Like, I don't think he had particularly bad games. He just wasn't particularly influential. And I think Saka is the only kind of one of those players who was a big name who actually turned up, really. And even then, he wasn't quite the player that you see playing for Arsenal. He obviously, you know, he was involved in goals and was our most threatening attacking outlet. But even then, it wasn't like watching Yamal, or it wasn't like watching Nico Williams for Spain. Like, it wasn't like everyone was terrified of him. Maybe it's just because it was so obvious everything's going through him.
I think that's the thing. Yeah, it's when you basically go into every game not having a left-hand side. It was obvious from the very first game, and you saw it against Denmark in the second game that they tweaked what was happening. So in that, Foden's not really an outlet on the left, Trippier's not an outlet on the left. So everything positive is going to go down that right-hand side, because you've not just got Saka, you've got Walker overlapping as well. And teams just went, okay, cool, we'll just we'll double up on Saka. We'll make sure someone's back for Walker as well. That's why there was at least once every game England played, at least once there was a moment where we'd switch the ball to the left and there was just acres of space for either Trippier or Foden to run into, because teams weren't bothered about them. Which makes it more frustrating that, one, we didn't utilise that enough, and two, bring on Anthony Gordon in those moments. I feel like that's the one player that we've sort of been crying out for, really, across, because we'll do the Southgate chat in a bit. To give him some credit, I think for the most part, even though they did come quite late more often than not, I think for the most part his subs did work, and had impacts. but you just would. I think Gordon is the only player that you can look at and go, he should have had way more minutes than he actually got. It was
my concern with the subs and stuff was, whilst they did have impacts, and yeah, they did come a little bit late at times. It feels like nothing was really learnt from that in games. Like it was going into the finals. Like we saw the impact that Ollie Watkins had, because it was someone else stretching behind the defense. It forces the defense to play 10 yards deeper. It opens up the space for Phil Foden. It does all this, like, makes a space for Bellingham and another player to kind of find spaces as well. And you go, right, hopefully he learns from this, and he just trots out the same 11 again. It's like, what are we learning from this? Like, what have you learned that, like, Harry Kane we've seen can't do anything because he's obviously absolutely crocked. So at which point, like, I don't think Harry Kane will go if Southgate went up to, I might be completely wrong, but based off like interviews I've seen with him and the kind of personality he puts across, he doesn't seem like the ego-driven, like everything has to be about me kind of guy. Like, I think if Southgate went up to him and went, look, Harry, you're obviously not fit. We'll bring you on the hour mark, 70 minutes, if we need a bit of experience to control the game, to, you know, and then you can just go burn out for 20 minutes. We've got Tony, we've got Watkins, who can offer different things and offer different, like, threats in behind or hold up play. Because Harry Kane we were playing with 10 men for the entire tournament basically when he was on the pitch. And,
pretty much, yeah. And so I was going to say on the Kane and the sort of ego point, it's not even like a case of needing to guess. You saw it when he got hooked after an hour against the Netherlands. And fair play to him, the first thing he did when the final whistle went, he ran straight over to Ollie Watkins and congratulated him. So I mean, there's obviously no ego there. Like, I think it's a case of, like, to take your captain and top goal scorer ever off after an hour in both the semi and the final. Southgate obviously knew there was an issue there, and obviously knew it wasn't working. I just think, and I think this has kind of been one of his biggest downfalls of the whole tournament. I think it's the first time, I've said this a few pods back, I think it's the first time he's gone to a tournament where he's actually kind of got a bit caught up in the noise outside in terms of what he should do. I feel like, for better or worse, or whether anyone agrees with it or not, for the most part, Southgate's always just done what he feels is best, and sort of ignores, like, I remember the previous Euros, like, everyone was up in arms that first 11 he named in the first game against Croatia. Like, what are you doing playing Rice and Phillips together? And it works. And for the again, regardless of whether people enjoy watching that style of football or not, it was more effective than what we've seen in this tournament. And I think for the first time, because you hear it, like, Alan Shearer was on co-coms for a lot of the England games, right? Whenever he'd be criticized, he'd go from criticizing Harry Kane and saying he's not doing enough and this, that, and the other. But as soon as the idea of dropping him gets mentioned, it's like, oh no, you can't drop Harry Kane. Like, because he's our top ever goal scorer. Like, if a chance falls to Harry Kane in the box, he does nothing else the rest of the game, that's fine. And I feel like that was kind of the attitude with Kane from Southgate, which is just not the...
Which is fine if the players behind him are pulling the team along, and you are basically just going, hang around in the penalty box, we'll get the game, we'll get the ball to you at some point. But he's not that player. Like, even though he was obviously physically not able to do it, he was still trying to track back and work in defence and work in midfield and play through balls. And, like, there was quite a few times where I saw him get on the ball in midfield, turn around to look for a runner, and everyone's facing him in front of the defence. It's like, if you're going to play Harry Kane, have people running beyond. Like, it's the only way it's really going to work. That's the way it's always been effective. But yeah, it was...
I was going to say, like, on that, I was talking with my stream about this, like, after the final and stuff, and I said, like, he obviously likes Gordon enough that he called him up and stuff, and he did use him in the friendlies. But it's like, I feel like even though Rashford was in worse form, and it ultimately was the right decision not taking Rashford or Sterling for that matter, I feel like you would have seen either of those two more than you would have seen Gordon, just because of previous. Like, right, it's... So on that logic, it's like, I'd rather he had just gone, nah, fuck it, I don't care about I don't care what people think, I don't care about his form. I trust Marcus Rashford, and I'm taking him to the tournament, because he might have actually ended up having, well, even if he played 10 minutes, he had probably more impact than Gordon had, because he didn't get on the pitch.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it's kind of a moot point now, because Southgate's obviously gone, but I think it was always like a stick to beat Southgate with a little bit. I think another thing as well is, I think this was the first time where, obviously, like in the previous Euros, it was a home final, like a home tournament kind of. And in the last World Cup, like, I had a decent squad, but I don't think anyone really expected England to win. I think this was the first time going into a tournament where everyone's like, England are the best team here. They've got the best players. Like, they've got like previous pedigree of getting deep into tournaments. Like, these guys should be the guys to beat. And I think that almost worked against him, because when you look at like what he was starting with Dele Alli and Jesse Lingard, and like this team that was nowhere near the squad. I think his first team had like Ryan Bertrand at left back, and and like all these players that were just kind of like getting that were nowhere near as good as the squad he's got now. And I wonder whether he's one of those managers that maybe he is just better as an underdog. Maybe he is one of those managers. Maybe like you've seen some managers do really well with a smaller team and get a bigger opportunity, and it just kind of falls apart because they don't know how to work when they're on top of the game, when they're in charge of the game, when they're controlling what happens. It's all about stepping off and counterpunching rather than knowing what to do when you are the better team. And I wonder whether that's kind of like factored into his decision making, whether it was a purely he jumped, or he was kind of, maybe now's a good time for you to say you're not going to renew your contract, right, with the FA. I don't know what, like, all the words were that the FA wanted to keep him on, but
yeah,
I think he's not blind to what people have seen, and I don't think he's blind enough on his own performances. I'm sure, like, if he objectively looks at how he's done with the players that he's got available, I'm sure he'd go, yeah, I didn't do well enough. Like, we should have done better. But at the same time, like, his complaints of we don't have a replacement for X and the players I've picked can't press like we want. It's like, well, you pick these players. If you've got a 26-man squad and you realize a lot of these players can't press how you want, pick different players. Like, at the end of the day, it does fall on his head for that. It's not like he's a club manager that's walked into an opportunity or a situation where he's got the players that are there and you can't get rid of them. He can literally pick the squad of anybody who's got an English passport. So he needs to find the right players. He needs to pick the right players. He maybe needs to be brutal and go, yeah, I'm not picking you. Like, I'm not picking you. Or you're not making my squad. Like, to be fair, he did it for a long time with Trent when Trent was playing really well. Like, he didn't really make squads and things, and he did stick by his guns with that deep double pivot. But at the same time, I think there's too many players playing too well now for them to not go. Where he's kind of in the past got away with not picking a Grealish because he was at Villa. Now you've got one of the, if not arguably the best player at some huge clubs who are winning a lot of things other than Bayern Munich, who you've kind of got to pick. You've got to have him in the squad, and it's like they're amazing players, but I just don't think he knows how to control a game. I don't think he knows how to set up a team like that.
No, I don't think that's ever been his. I don't think that's ever been his thing, and I think he's as much admitted that, right? I think it's that thing. It's difficult for me to not draw parallels to Moyes because they are very similar in the way they, especially knockout football, in the way they both approach sort of knockout tournaments and stuff. It's a team that is set up to limit the amount of chances the opposition has and wait for one of your good players to come up with a moment, which when it works, it works in the sense of you almost, so like the Netherlands game is almost, and the Swiss game even really is almost the perfect examples of it. Because when we won the penalty shootout against the Swiss, and then when Ollie Watkins scores that goal in the 90th minute with like 30 seconds left, you don't, for me anyway, you just don't care about how you performed throughout the whole game, because that moment always almost makes it worth it. Yeah. It just sort of washes away all the crap you've had to sort of sit through. But more so with the Switzerland game. Like I said, the Holland game was easily our best performance of the entire tournament. Not that the bar was very high. But the problem is when you're coming up against a team that is so good against Spain. And again, had it worked, it would have been glorious, and no one would have even thought about how well we actually played throughout the whole tournament. Had we ended up winning the whole thing in 5 months, let alone 5 years. But yeah, when you come up against a team that is so well organised, but also got the handbrake off and the freedom to attack and control games and catch you out on the counter attack and stuff, and pressure you and force you into making mistakes. It's just moments aren't really enough to get you through. And I think that's twice that's now happened with Southgate. Once against Italy and once against, and it obviously came a lot closer against Italy. But yeah, it's whilst it works, when it works, it's amazing. It feels great. It's just not that sustainable in the long term, really. Like, again, you got more chance of being successful with it in tournament football than you have league football, obviously. But like I say, when you got a team as good as Spain were, you needed a little bit more of a game plan, I think, than just keep them at bay and wait for something to happen. And to be fair, I thought we defended really. I actually thought defensively the game plan was working really well in the first half. I think they had one or two chances towards the end of the first half. Other than that, they didn't look that threatening. I thought we did a really good job of keeping them at bay and nullifying their threats. The issue was we just had no threat going forward at all. Whereas if you'd have played that way and he had made that brave call to play Ollie Watkins from the get-go, we may have had a bit more joy in the counter-attack. Or even Ivan Toney, because ultimately, going back to the Kane thing, if you want someone to hold the ball up and make it stick, well, Tony's been better at that than Kane whenever he's played this tournament. Or if you want someone to run off the shoulder or be like a more direct outlet for someone to run onto, Watkins has been better than Kane at that the whole tournament. Like, they've both ended up being better at all the things that Kane is good at individually, because Kane's been so ineffective. But yeah, I don't know whether it's just an English. Like, we'll get onto like the English coaching stuff a bit later on. But like, I don't know whether that's just how far behind we are in terms of coaching compared to other nations. I think that seemingly has always been the game plan for England. Whenever I watch them in tournaments, it's just stick at it and wait for something to happen. Do you know what I mean? It feels like plucky underdog, grit and spirit over tactics. Feels like more we're still sort of stuck in the sort of like late 80s, early 90s sort of thing compared to a lot of other nations when it comes to coaching.
Yeah, and previously, I think you've got to give credit where it's due. Like, obviously, reaching two finals, a semi-final, a fourth place finish, and a couple and a quarter final as well. Like, if you look at it with no context, you'd have to go, he's had 4 tournaments. He's done really well. It's when you bring the context of it all in and you look at the runs and the way that he's gone, like the teams that he's played and the way that the team's played and the players that he's had available to do what he needs to do. That's when, like, question marks, were rightly being raised. And obviously, it's like I said before, it's a moot point now. He's gone. The next person will come in, depending on whoever that is. I can see them. I can see the FA wanting to go for someone with a little bit more of an expansive way of playing to try and make the most of these players that they've got now. You'd hope anyway. Like you say, it's a tournament football is very different to a 38-game league. I think a league phase is always a better barometer of the quality of a squad because you're doing it over a longer period. Anyone can lose a game on a day. But he's made the position. He's got to the 2 finals. He's got to a semi. You've got to kind of hold your hands up and go. In relative to previous generations and previous managers, he's got more out of the team than, or at least, more success in quotation marks than anyone else.
That's the thing, right? It's relative success, isn't it? It's like so. If we want to sort of define success as just whether you want a trophy or not, then yeah, it's he's not been successful. But I think when you look at we speak about context. I think taking the overall context of what England have been before Southgate, like what was the start I saw? He's reached more knockout games than like the past 20 managers combined or something like that. He's won more knockout games than the past 20 managers combined, which is insanity. I know England haven't always had the wealth of talent we've got in this current squad or like we had in the early 2000s, but we've always had good players and decent squads, good starting 11s at the very least. Maybe not always, but for the most part, it feels like like the late 80s and 90s and stuff, and again the early 2000s. So I think, because obviously when he announced he was leaving, there was a lot of like eulogizing, a lot of sort of reflection from England fans and stuff, and I can understand. I as someone who's been a massive defender of Southgate and being a big fan of his, I agree it's the right time for him to go, because I think I think even he knows this. He's taken it as far as he can go. I don't think he's capable of getting us over the line and actually taking that final step to winning something. But in terms of just being England manager and what that comes with, and obviously it's not just the tactics and the in-game stuff, it's everything else that comes with it, the dealing with the press and the as bullshit patriotic as it sounds, there is some truth to it. As the sort of uniting a nation type feel with it. It's like it's difficult to say about living in another country, but it feels like we have the most pressure on a national team coach than most countries do. And I think he's done I think that's the biggest thing he'll leave behind for the next person that comes in, which I think and I hope will lead England in good stead in the future. Is I think the impact he's had on just the players and how they feel about playing for England is probably the biggest thing, because you've heard all the stories from the previous golden generation about how no one really enjoyed going on international duty. They couldn't wait to get back to their clubs and get back into the title race and stuff, and no one liked each other and spoke to each other and stuff. I don't think it can, but I just don't think it can be understated the job he's done in that regards. Whereas like they all go away, you got players from Man United and Man City getting on like their best mates and stuff, and you know Liverpool and City and other players from clubs who have been in title races down the years. That all you get the impression when you watch these players play together and train and stuff. All that gets put to bed as soon as they get to St George's Park or to a tournament, and I think. Like I say, that part of the job for me can't be understated because so many managers who are, you know, have been way better qualified than what Southgate is when he took the England job, have not been able to do that. And that if that remains, then England have got a chance in the future. If the next guy comes in and doesn't really care about that much, then it will be more of the same that it was before Southgate, ultimately.
Yeah, there has been a sea change, and even like I think it was the first time that there's ever felt like a bit of a backlash against the way that England were playing this time as well. And I think it just kind of like folded into that. We were expected to do well, and we're watching them play, and it's like this isn't good enough. Whereas previously been like, oh look, we've made it to another quarter, another semi. Like things could have been better, but coming into this as the tournament favourites, as the bookies' favourites, the kind of. Calling it backlash it almost feels harsh because it wasn't really backlash. It was just criticism for underperformances. Like, and I really hate the way that like some of the players and Southgate came out as well saying it's been we've got loads of criticism and it's getting personal. It's like no, it's not. People are just calling out a poor performance. Like people have a right to do that, whether it be ex-players or pundits or the public or whatever it is. Like everyone's got the right to do that. It's not getting personal. Like. David Beckham's not coming back in '98 with burning effigies and a dartboard on the back of a newspaper. Like it's none of that kind of stuff. It's nothing's personal. It's like people just expect more out of what is world class players, and I think that's fair. Kind of to go back on a little bit onto achieving more than what previous managers have done, and you can't argue that he has done that. But I think again to kind of bring a bit of context into the situation is. I don't particularly think that this current generation of international football is particularly exceptional. When you look at the early to mid 2000s, obviously, like previously, you got that Spain side who was incredible, like made up of basically Real Madrid and Barcelona, who were dominating everything. Previous to that, you've had a France team who were made up of incredible footballers. You had that Brazil side who in the early 2000s, who's one of the best international sides you've ever seen. You've got the Germany side of the late 90s. Like you've got, I don't feel like it's the same kind of international cauldron. Like almost like it doesn't feel like the quality of international football is anywhere near the same. And it's a disappointment for me that, like, for example, like this Spain squad that's just won, was really good, best team in the tournament. They're not a patch on that Spain squad of the like early to mid 2000s or 2010s.
No.
And it's the kind of taking that. The previous golden generation of England into context as well is like that's a better squad than what we've got now.
Yeah,
but I think they were just up against much better international sides. Granted, like it was kind of led by managers who weren't getting the most out of the players and playing players out of position and not setting up properly and trying to play again, like you said, that kind of blood and thunder. Football, like that British Brexit football, rather than letting actual good footballers play football with the right players on the pitch. But still, like I think they were playing in a different era in terms of when you look at that Brazil squad, you got like Roberto Carlos and Cafu, and you got El Fenomeno up front with Ronaldinho and Kaká behind him, and like it's and that Italian side with Buffon and Cannavaro and Nesta and. Maldini and everything that goes with it, and that France squad that won everything between 98 and 2002, and it's a completely different landscape internationally of football. There's a load of really talented young players in all these nations, and we'll see whether they all develop into a similar kind of force. But we've kind of talked about it on the pod before. Like, I don't know whether it is just rose-tinted glasses of the early 2000s, mid 2000s when I was really getting into football. But I think it was better quality football with better players.
Oh, it was.
Playing much better quality international tournaments back then. So I think that is an important kind of bit of context to do. Not to kind of defend the underperformance of those managers and the players that were there and kind of not agree that there was a negative atmosphere in the England camp. And like you say, if they can keep that positive atmosphere, and foster it and bring in another manager who's able to do that and kind of get everyone fighting for the shirt, as cliche as that is. I think that the quality of players and hopefully how they developed and continue to develop, because a lot of the best players there are 25 and under. It can only be a good thing. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
It does make me laugh, like the amount of like one of the things I never agree with when people were sort of going at Southgate and stuff was like, oh, he's ruining in this generation of players. Like this is their one chance. It's like, not really. Like it's just like they say Bellingham's like still 21, Rice is what 24, Foden's 24, Saka's 23, I think, maybe even younger than that. Like the main bulk of the squad and the players that are coming through are still young enough to still go for another like 3 or 4 tournaments. Like this wasn't like a one-shot chance for this group of England players. Like Harry Kane, sure, but there's other strikers coming through, you know. So
yeah, the kind of
that doom and gloom.
Yeah, the worry that everyone had about what do we do when Harry Kane's not there was kind of shown to be, well, we kind of play better when he isn't. So like maybe if the next tournament or even the tournament after that, and he goes into a bit more of a, I wonder whether like going into his early 30s he's going to have that kind of Wayne Rooney-esque kind of withdrawal down the pitch, or kind of not be as involved as a striker, or maybe even come off the bench, be a bit more of a saying cheerleader's a bit harsh, but like more of an experienced presence on the bench, and allowing those different kinds of forwards to be getting on the pitch.
Because you just got to look at successful international teams in the past, right? Look at when France won the World Cup. Like Giroud, no, it was obviously not. It was a bit younger back then because we're going back to like 2018. But like, or even like when France got to the most recent World Cup in Qatar. Sorry, they got there. Like Giroud was a really important player for them, not the main goal threat, but like just in terms of being a hold up, bringing Dembele and Mbappe or whoever else on the wing into play and stuff. We look at what Morata's done in this Spain team. Like I called it a few pods ago, not only a goal scorer, but he's vital for the way they play and build up. And I think that's almost what we needed Kane to be. Like,
yeah. Well, famously, I think it was when they won the World Cup, Giroud didn't score.
Yeah, that's
in that tournament.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
But I mean, even when they got to the final last time, like, he was still a really important player all the way through. Is a facilitator, and if you get using him as a facilitator and can let him be that playmaker. The issue is that like those kind of players that drop off and play make, you don't need it when you got Phil Foden and Bellingham and like all these other players who are getting into the pitch. But that's for the next manager to kind of figure out and work out how that's going to work going forward. It's a jigsaw puzzle that has got too many. If it's like a jigsaw puzzle that's got too many parts for the same part, basically, and we need a manager who's going to go, sorry mate, you're coming off the bench, or like you're going to finish the game, you ain't starting it, to one of these big names or two of these big names, because unfortunately we're just a bit too stacked in some positions. And when you look at the successful teams of the past, like managers have to make tough decisions and for the good of the team. Look at the that again, I go back to the Brazil sides of the past and the Spain sides of the past and the France sides of the past. You look at that bench and you go, why isn't Thierry Henry in the starting 11? Like it's difficult decisions that need to be made for the right of the team, but that falls on the next person. I guess we'll
stop playing Jude Bellingham as a 10 would be my first suggestion.
Or just play one of Foden or Bellingham. Like stop trying to shoe on them both in. Like,
I think you can do both. Like, I don't know. I was watching, like I said, watching that Spain midfield, and I came away with it, and I'm like, you could have had. I know Rice and Rodri are different types of players, and maybe Rice isn't a great example to use, but I think you could have Rice doing a less glamorous version of the Rodri role. You could have Bellingham being that Fabian Ruiz who's like up and down, doing the dirty work, but also can unlock and break lines and stuff with passing. And you just got Foden doing the Dani Olmo thing of just being creative and being a goal threat. I think that would have been. We said it all, in the build-up to the tournament. That should be the midfield 3. Like Rice sitting, Bellingham's the 8, Foden's the 10 or whatever. And I think because for me, Bellingham always looked better when he ends up later in the game, dropping a bit deeper and helping Rice out with the defensive duties.
Yeah,
like he just looks way more effective than trying to be. It felt like we tried to build the team around Bellingham for him to be the main guy, but then also build it around Kane to be the main guy, and also build around. Do you know what I mean? It felt like just sticking round pegs and square holes for the sake of trying to make these players stand out rather than what was best for the overall system, which I think is overall probably my biggest frustration with Southgate in this tournament. And again, not taking a left back because Kieran Trippier has been a great servant and stuff, and it's just like, as long as the next guy just does what's best for the overall system and puts players in the best positions to accommodate a system, then we're already onto a better improvement than what's been in the most recent tournament. Because again, that's the frustrating part. He's done that in previous tournaments. He's picked players that has not been popular, but it works for the system he's trying to do, and that's like I say, you do that, you're already off to a good start, I think. So
and also,
rather than trying to just shoehorn everyone in.
Also, different tools for different jobs. You know, like you can go and say to Phil Foden and Jude Bellingham, you're both my starting number 10. Depends on the team we're playing against, though. We're playing against a really low block and they're going to sit in, and we need someone who can kind of wriggle between lines and play quick 1-2s. I'm going to be picking Phil Foden. If we want someone who's going to be a physical presence and get into the box and get on the end of things, I'm going to be picking Jude Bellingham. Like, it's the very different players. Like, neither of them are like. I don't think either of them are like line splitting kind of De Bruyne-esque,
No, they're not.
Bruno Fernandes-esque, like, you know, chance creators. But I think they've both got elite levels of their game in different parts of different parts of the pitch, and it's like I say, different tools for different jobs. And I think hopefully the next manager that comes in has the belief in himself and can, you know, has the balls basically to kind of put that onto the pitch. Speaking of, Southgate, we've mentioned, has gone. Who do you? We've all seen the favourites for the job, like, and there's loads of names being kind of cast around, and it's like, oh well, we should only be aiming for Jurgen Klopp or Pep, or it's like it's never going to happen. My big thing with the people like going, oh well, Pep's leaving at the end of next year, let's just get someone until we can get him. It's like, what, and get the tactical perfectionist to get to work with the players 5 days before a game, and then they go away for another 3 months. It's never going to work. I just don't think he'd be able to be as effective. Maybe he would. I mean, he's obviously a motivational guy, but I think because he's such like a tactical perfectionist, like I say, he wants to kind of control everything. He wants to play like, you know, he's got a computer game controller. Like,
yeah.
I just don't think that'll translate that well into international football, where it is a bit more of like getting simple instructions, getting something that works, like getting players in the right positions for the right situation, and motivating them to perform to the best of their ability. I just don't think he's that kind of guy.
The only way that works is if this summer City go out and buy the 2026 England squad.
Yeah. They just do. They just do a Barca. Like, just pick. Yeah.
That's the only way it's going to work. The thing is, as well, I think we mentioned this like when we were discussing like the sort of differences between knockout and league football and stuff, and you know why it's not a case of just take a Pep, take a Jurgen Klopp, and just dump in the England team and it will be fine. Pep, I need to see the actual numbers and stuff. Pep's not got the best knockout record, really. Like, I know in like domestic cups he's done really well, but like on like big state, like it's easy to do well when you're Man City and you play your third, fourth, and fifth round games in the League Cup against like Barnsley, West Ham, Bolton. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've only
I like how you lumped West Ham into Barnsley and Bolton.
Yeah, well, you know, I shouldn't do really. We knocked them out. We stopped their run like a few years back. Knocked them out on penalties. So yeah I should.
And European champions as well.
We are. Never forget viewers, or listeners. But yeah, like it's what was I saying? But yeah, like so I don't think Pep's knockout record, and especially in the Champions League, is that like encouraging. Like, and he's always had a bit of a thing against him where it's like he'll get to like the quarters or semi-finals and just go, I'm just gonna change shit. I'm gonna do some mad form like tactical stuff just because we're Man City and we can, and they get dumped out by Leon. And it's like, oh, okay, like. That worked, didn't it? Or they come up against a team like a Real Madrid who've got good players who are willing to sort of sit in and just, not to compare Carlo Ancelotti to Gareth Southgate, but like who will sit in and wait for moments because they've got world-class players who are, and they got Vinicius Junior who can just, you know, if you want to play counter-attacking football, he's good.
Yeah. Kick
they'll
it.
come
Watch him run after it.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So that's the thing. So it's like whether if England, if the World Cup was a 38 league campaign, which is given the way FIFA are going, it might be in a few years. But like, whilst it's still a knockout tournament, I don't know. There's not like, sure, he'll play lovely football. It's absolutely fuck all guarantee it's going to work though. Like
a perfect example is the Spain team under Figo. No, not Figo. Under Figo. Enrique. Sorry. It's been a long day. It's been a long day.
How long have you been to? Sergio Busquets is playing in the most recent Euros and Figo managed Spain. Where is it? Where is this moment?
It's Monday, guys. We're recording this on a Monday. It's been a long day.
It's the multiverse of madness.
But like the Spain team of the last few tournaments is kind of like has been that. Yeah, it's like watching Man City. It's like the difference is Man City don't have a load of Spanish. They've got Kevin De Bruyne kicking it to Erling Haaland at the end of the day. Like okay, well you don't kick it. You've not got some Morata up front who can't finish. Like that's the difference.
That Spain team under Enrique was that Simpsons meme. You're like half back to wing, back to centre.
Well, it was that under Del Bosque as well, though. The difference was, they had Iniesta and like Fabregas and like elite of the elite players getting on the end of things, whereas that the last couple of tournaments they just haven't quite had that. But yeah, it's a very different style of football. And like I say, you just don't get time to implement the style of football. So I think for me personally, I'd love to see obviously an English manager would be great, and we'll kind of go into the dearth of English options really. But you'd be looking at someone, unless they're going to go the route again and bring, is it Boothroyd who's the under-21s manager?
Lee Carsley.
Carsley, sorry, it used to be Boothroyd, didn't it? Carsley through, who's done obviously really good stuff with the youth system, does play a bit more of an open kind of more of attacking style of football, allows players to express themselves a little bit more, so that could be good if they want to go the same route. Obviously, that's just worked for Spain. They brought through their manager, who was their youth manager, and he will have worked with a lot of these players who are in the squad. So maybe that isn't the sexy appointment, but maybe it's the right one.
I think it is personally.
Yeah, it could be, unless there is that standout option of a manager who has shown that they can go in and at short notice implement a system and get players playing properly. And for me, there's two names of current English managers that I'd want to see that. Obviously, Eddie Howe is the name that loads of people are saying. He seems a little bit standoffish about the situation at Newcastle. Obviously, a lot of change going on there. The people who hired him have gone. He could be an option. We would have to put up with Tyndall on the sidelines, but swings and roundabouts. Bring on the memes. Yeah. But I do like Eddie Howe. I think he'd be good. And the speed in which he turned around that Newcastle team and those performances with the same players, then I think he'd do a good job there. The other name that I love, and it's not just because he's a name, Sean Dyche, I think would be a great international football manager. If Everton had a goal scorer last year, they'd have been a top half team, even with the points deduction. He went in, turned things around from an absolute dumpster fire under Lampard, and the fact that Lampard has been linked with it is an absolute joke, by the way. It is literal kind of just because of the name. It's the same thing with Steven Gerrard getting the Villa job. It's an absolute joke.
Yeah.
But to go in and very quickly kind of implement a simple but effective system that did play really good football. Everton, that first half of the season, before they get that points deduction, before they found themselves getting dragged towards the bottom of the league table, like I say, they were playing really good football. Dynamic midfield, lots of breaking between the lines, wingers getting in, strikers getting through. They just couldn't hit the back of the net. Obviously, when he needed to, set him up a little bit more solidly. Got a ton of eked out games and got points where they needed him. I think he's a versatile manager, and I think he doesn't strike me as a guy who'd be, whilst he's never worked with the huge names of football, he doesn't strike me as a bloke who's going to get overawed by it. If someone starts mouthing off at him in a changing room, I don't care if you're Jude Bellingham or Phil Foden, I'm going to tell him to sit down. Look, if you don't want to play this way, then I'll pick someone who does. Yeah, it would be a bit gruffer than that, but words to that effect. It will sound like he's just been gargling gravel, but I think as a kind of manager that I think could implement that kind of system and get a tune out of this team. If you're going for current managers, then I think those are really the only two options. Like I say, I think linking to Gerrard and Lampard, I think it's just a laugh. I don't think Klopp's not going to take an international job. I think he's waiting out.
Might come back.
Yeah,
he might be done. And yeah, like we've said about Pep, I don't think Sure, the FA want him. I'm sure they would, but like I just don't see. I think Pep's gone on record to say like he wants to manage a national team, and arguably at club level, where is there to go after City? Like winning the Champions League with PSG, like maybe, but like so that maybe there is a little bit more credence in that, and maybe it's not as outlandish. But I just, even if he was to take it, I'm not convinced it would work, just for the reasons that we've already outlined. Yeah, I think Eddie Howe is the obvious choice. Like, and yeah, his comments the other day when being asked about it were really interesting. Where he was like, what was he said? It's like, oh, but as long as I'm it was something along the lines of, oh, as long as I'm like, I know I've got full support, I'll be happy to stay at Newcastle. And it was a little bit like open ended sort of thing. And so I do wonder if he was approached, one, would Newcastle be happy? The current ownership as it is at Newcastle now be happy for him to go, and would he be willing to talk to the FA about it? Graham Potter, I think, falls under a similar bracket of Pep in a way that, like, really good coach, but I just think would need more time on the training grounds. Like, he was when he was in with the West Ham job. I always said I have no problem bringing Graham Potter in though, but not mid-season. I'd want him in start like end of the season, get him in at pre-season, so he's got the time on the pitch to get his ideas across, rather than trying to do it all mid-season. Because I think that kind of ultimately screwed him at Chelsea. Aside from Chelsea being a complete basket case as well, which isn't going to help. Like Gary O'Neill, maybe, but it's still a bit early, I think.
I think he needs another few years and maybe another job to show that, like, in the same way that the Dyche and Howe like they've shown.
Yeah.
Oh no, like this isn't a flash in the pan thing. And I know it's two back-to-back seasons with teams expected to underperform with Gary O'Neill. I think still, I'd like to see just like another year or two, just to kind of go. Because maybe it is a case of the next manager comes in, does a terrible job at the next World Cup, and we're looking for someone else, and Gary O'Neill's just got Wolves into the top 8. It's like, well, yeah, he's the guy then, isn't he?
Yeah. So it's difficult. For me, I just because I'm the same. I don't. It's why it always bugged me when people bring up Southgate's club records, like as a stick to beat him with, and yeah, like it's not great, but when people just sort of dull it down to just we've got to relegate with Borough, it's like, well, yeah, Borough was shit though. Borough were in a bit of a shit state at that point.
They did relegate England as well, though. To be fair.
Well, yeah. Well, anyway, but like I don't know. I don't think you need. I don't think England need the best in class or like someone with a great track record at club level. And I don't think most international teams do. I think you look at most international managers who win stuff, like a large chunk of them don't have the best club records, like from just off the top of my head anyway. Like Deschamps hasn't had a club job for like fucking 20 years or whatever. Like, the guy who won I'm trying to think the guy who won the Euros with Portugal, can't remember who it was at the time, but like I don't think he's gone back into management since the Portugal job. You look at Lionel Scaloni, he was the like assistant under-20s manager, got the under-20s job as a caretaker, and then got the main job as a caretaker, and just happened to keep it. And he obviously won a World Cup. So I think for me, it makes the most logical decision would be to keep it in house, and I think Lee Carsley would be the guy to do it. Like you say, he's won the Euros with the under-21s. He'll know a bunch of the players there already, and I just think keeping it. And like I say, it had been in that same system that Southgate was in, and therefore would I think have a better chance of maintaining that atmosphere and that squad harmony out of anyone, just because he's been in that environment. And then you can look at giving, if you really want Frank Lampard to if not you, but if someone really wants Frank Lampard to be an England manager one day, cool, give him the under-21 job. Because I've actually always said that that job would be perfect for Lampard, actually, because I'm not saying I want him as the England manager now, but what I'm saying is the difference between him and Gerrard is Lampard has shown that he's good at working with young players and working when there's not as much pressure on him. So like when he first went in, like when he went to Derby, did a decent job. I think it gets a little bit understated just because it's Frank Lampard. The job he did at Derby, I think he did really well for his first job anyway. And in that first season at Chelsea, with a transfer ban and playing most of the academy players who had barely touched the ball in the Premier League before, got him into the top 4. It was only really when they were allowed to spend money again and the expectations got raised that it all went downhill. And Everton, yeah, you can't really defend his job at Everton. It was abysmal. But I think if you get him in at the under-21 level and give whilst Carsley's the main manager, then at least you've got a succession plan in place, depending on how well he does, which I think is what the FA need, rather than just sort of scratching his looking around, going, "Is Poch available?" Or I mean, Pep would be good. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like we just need a little bit of forward planning for once from the FA,
and also experience in working under the time frames as well. Like,
yeah,
okay, right, I've got these players for 5 days before we play 3 games in 10 days. Okay, this is how we're going to schedule the training. This is how we're going to set things up, because he's got experience in doing it. He knows how much or how little he can actually impart into teams and into players. And I think if you bring one of these managers who's used to living, 18-hour days on the training field for 10 hours, like nitpicking and doing the minutiae of tactical tweaking, when you drag them out of that and put them in, it's like, yeah, you get to see some of these players, maybe if they're fit, you might have a completely different, you might be missing 5-6 of your players that you want to be using. By the way, you've got 4 days, 4 training sessions to get a tactic into these guys and then go and beat some teams. Like, it's going to be such a baptism of fire into that if they've got no experience with it. I think, promoting from within with people that have got not only experience of working with a lot of these players, but also experience of, like I say, time frames, tournament football, the time between games, what you can and what you can't teach players, like what is effective international football. Because, if we're picking the under-21s manager for the past few years, we're probably going to be playing against a lot of the players that were in the under-21s set up in the other teams. Like, so it's like, oh well, I remember how these guys played. I know what to expect from him in an international tournament. Obviously, it's all going to be changeable depending on where they're at and where they're playing and where they're at in their career. But I think there's just way more positives for going down that route than any other. And I kind of echo you with the Lampard thing as well. It's like, yeah, if he is the FA's long-term idea, get him even under 19s. Go work with the under 19s for a couple of years. Okay, when the next job comes, maybe you move the under 19s managers to the under 21s. Maybe he goes and gets a job somewhere else. Maybe something shuffles around, but maybe you do a tournament with them. Maybe then you do the next tournament with the under 21s, and then at that point, with 4 years, 6 years down the line, maybe we need a different manager. And then he's there, the ready-made replacement. And you've got an let's be honest, an ex-England legend. Massive name in the game, a guy who obviously wants to be a good football manager, or else he wouldn't still be doing it and looking for jobs. And you've got to give him some credit for jumping in at the deep end and taking on those big pressure moments. And whilst I don't really rate him as a coach at all, at least he's shown willingness to put himself in there. Or even on the flip side of that, like a Wayne Rooney or one of these managers who shows that they actually want to do it. Get these guys, if you want the future of England to be like a in-house, we want England legends leading the England team in the future, like Germany have done in the past, like France are doing with Deschamps, like these kind of managers. It wouldn't surprise me if Thierry Henry is in the frame to be the next France manager after the Olympics. He's got a load of international experience with Belgium and other things as well. If you want that to be the springboard for these young these young managers who were ex-England players, get him in the system. Get him learning international football. It's a different game, a completely different game.
Absolutely. And I think it's a really good point on Rooney. It's one of the things it's easy to meme on Lampard, obviously, because of what he's because of the funny face thing he does, and and that would be great. Yeah, that would be great to see after England been knocked out. So the way it goes on, but no, seriously, I'm devastated. But but at least he has shown a willingness to carry on, unlike Gerrard, who was just kind of, let's be honest, pissed away some really key develop. What can't I say the word? Development. Development years. Yes. Sorry. Fuck me. I've got to France for a week. I can't speak the language anymore. He's pissed away some really good years in terms of his development by going to Saudi and seemingly very comfortable there. Whereas Rooney's gone down, he's managing in Plymouth in the Championship, who, let's be honest, no great expectations there. It's a great club for him to be at, just to learn and forge himself a good career and improve himself as a coach. And the one thing I've always had against Lampard, he's been too picky with previous jobs. Don't say the Norwich job is. Don't think you're too big for the Norwich job, or the the Palace job's too big of a rebuild. I'm not confident I can keep him up. Fuck that. You're a young manager. Just because you're a good player, that shouldn't mean anything anymore. You're a young coach who is learning his trade. So go and learn, make mistakes, and come back and learn from those mistakes. And I think if he's he's got aspirations to be, I don't know if he has. Like, I'm just guessing by the amount of people that keep talking him up for the job. There must be some aspirations there. Like I say, go and get yourself an FA setup, and if it is Carsley that is even an interim manager for the senior squad, go put your name in for the under-21s. Because again, he's shown that he can work with young players in the past and get a tune out of them. They listen to him, and I think if you're a player in that under-21 squad, it's not. There's worse people to learn off than Frank Lampard, you know. So.
And also as well, like the whole setup, like that whole St George's Park setup. Yeah, it's been great for young English players, but it's not just for the players; it's for the staff and the coaches and the managers and everything as well. So go into this environment that's where you're going to learn how to be a better coach, how to be a better manager, how to be a better how to understand the game state more. Like I said before, it's a different game. Purely tournament football is a completely different game to a 38 game season. And it's all about moments and learning when to make those changes and knowing how to affect the game in the final situation, in the pressure situations, which I think was always Southgate's downfall. Learn from that and learn how to do it better. Like, because if he does, you know, I'm not a Chelsea fan. I don't particularly have any kind of fondness for Frank Lampard, but I'll tell you what, like if he was the England manager, like I'm sure a lot of the press would have given him a lot more of an easier ride, and a lot of the players would just give him a lot more leeway through respect than anything, because he was a world-class player in his prime.
Yeah, absolutely. On this, I was thinking about this the other day, and obviously you look at, you know, without delving too much into other nations, because I don't have that data or that time to find that data. But like, it does feel like, and I say feels like it's been an issue for ages, right? And I think the Premier League obviously plays a big part in that. But there is a real problem with English coaches coming through in terms of the modern game. When you look at like the English managers who are still, or like a large chunk of English managers who are still working today or have only recently sort of stopped, like they're managers that you'd associate from an era that's doesn't really exist anymore. And it feels like for a Premier League club, and even, you know, top half of the Championship even, you're not going to rather than take a risk on an untested up and coming English coach, you can just go and cherry pick someone from Spain or Italy or Germany who is younger and may have, you know, a similar amount of experience or whatever, but go, oh, they've got this track record in this league, so we'll just go for them rather than, you know, taking someone from someone's coaching staff or from like League Two or wherever, right? Or an assistant manager who's looking to move up or whatever. Like, it doesn't really seem to be there. And that I think that sort of plays into what we're saying about getting them into the FA setup, because at the moment, there's not really a big pathway for Englishmen, unless you were a well-known player. Like you look at Gary O'Neill, for example, like, got the Bournemouth job as a caretaker, and it was only because they couldn't find anyone immediately, and he was getting results. He kind of not got lucky, because obviously he worked hard to get where he is now, but like most other clubs wouldn't have given him A, the time, or B, given him the job full time to begin with. It would have been, all right, you're just interim now, and we'll just replace you when someone else comes along, which is what Bournemouth did with him, and what Wolves might end up doing in the future, depending on obviously how well he does. But yeah, how much is it a worry that England seem to really struggle getting new coaches through compared to the rest of Europe and the world?
I mean, historically, I think it's been really poor all the time, and I think a big part of it is, like I follow listen to a podcast about a guy who's doing his coaching badges and trying to get it on the, you know, on the coaching spectrum in England, and it's essentially impossible unless you're already working for a big football club, or you're a big ex-player, to get the Continental Pro license in England. This guy's like he's doing it through the FA of Wales, I think, doing his pro license or his A license or whatever it is. So I think that's one thing, is it's almost impossible unless you are mates or are a big football player or already working for a football club. Then you can't basically get on this get on the rung to even start becoming a coach or a manager. So I think that shuts a lot of things down, other than these, you know, the big ex-players. And I think that's really shown, like, I'd say more kind of in previous generations. Because I pulled up, when you mentioned this to me, like I pulled up all of the English football managers who have spent more than a year at a football club. So, like, they've finished a season. And maybe they stayed on for longer than a season. Maybe, like, it's just been, they got kind of cut loose after that. There's only 41 managers in the last 20 years that have been in charge of an English Premier League side for a year or longer. And when you extrapolate that 20 years, 20 clubs, that's not a lot. There are obviously some standout names of managers who have done well at periods. I know you hate him, but Pardew, obviously had a successful period. He's obviously been cut aside now. But going through it, there's very, very few trophies, wins, even kind of successful runs in cups. The one that stands out, and he barely makes it into the last 20 years, is Bobby Robson at Newcastle.
Yeah.
And
so
all
a lot of heavy lifting on that.
yeah, and all of his wins were obviously in the 70s and 80s. He's won UEFA Cups and done really well in Portugal and Spain and all this kind of wonderful manager. But by the time he got the England job, he struggled there as well. Other managers who've done well relatively on a domestic level just haven't cut it when they got the England manager's job. So yeah, it's tough, and I don't think there's been a great pathway for managers to get those jobs. Like you say, I think the advent of the Premier League, there's an easier pathway for more coaches to get into coaching jobs around Europe. I know it's a lot easier in Portugal and France and Italy. That's why you see a lot of those managers coming through. But they also get the experience because they're willing to work lower down. They work their way up through the leagues, and I think big teams in the top leagues of other nations are more willing to give a chance to a Portuguese manager who's worked his way up through the leagues, or a Italian manager who's had. I mean, you look at some of the Italian managers they've had, the internationally, or managers of big international, big Serie A sides. They've got 12 clubs down in Serie C that they've worked at, and they've done 15 years of earning their stripes and learning football. It feels like the English managers don't do that, or aren't given the opportunity to even get on the coaching map because they can't get their A license or their pro license. So I think that's a big issue with it. That being said, I do feel like there are more promising, in quotation marks, English managers coming through right now. I think with the younger breed of, obviously we've already mentioned Potter and Eddie Howe, still very young in management terms, they're early 40s. We've got Frank Lampard, who we just mentioned as well, who seems determined to get into the management game. Rooney again. There's also Parker. O'Neill, who we've mentioned. So some good young managers getting experience, getting management experience, who could take that next step up and hopefully do. Hopefully they do get that opportunity to go and shine eventually. Hopefully they do learn what they need to learn to kind of progress. But I still feel like there is a significant dearth of, compared to other nations, there's nowhere near as many English managers in the top flights, or even in the Championship and around Europe. When you look in Germany, you look in Spain, you look in Italy, you look in England, you've got Portuguese managers, Italian managers, you've got German managers everywhere. The English managers are only in England, and there's only about 40% of the teams have got an English manager in the football pyramid. There's not a whole lot. You don't see a lot of them going away and doing the going working in Sweden thing like Potter did and taking that chance. So it's hopefully it's on a bit of a change. Hopefully there's more ex-players or even just English people who are able to get onto these coaching courses and get their way into football, because I dare say a lot of people would love to be able to do it. There's just unfortunately not the support from the FA and the pathway for English managers to do it. I don't think it's a case of ability. I think it's just exposure and availability of spots in coaching courses.
Yeah, absolutely. Not really much to add there. I think it feels like that we, in England anyway, we've definitely been playing catch up for a long time in terms of catching other nations and stuff. And funny enough, actually, I found a clip a few weeks ago. It was actually Southgate when I think when he got knocked out in 2010. I want to say maybe it was a tournament where Southgate was a pundit, and interestingly, he was talking about I think one of the questions put to him was Spain play this way and Italy and France play this way. It's why can't England do that? And he was saying the thing is, it's got to start from. I know this is more player development than coaches, but I think it is linked. Like you're saying, you've got to start them when they're sort of 5-6, and get a style of play sort of drilled into them, and then bring it up through that way. So that if you want a nation to have a recognised style of play, you can do it. That's how you got to do it essentially. And for me, logically, that'd be the same with coaches, right? If England want to sort of progress how as a nation we see football. And obviously, it's football, like the style of play is completely subjective, right? But it all goes back to what I was saying earlier about having that. It feels like an English thing of tactics go out the window. It's all about grit, determination. That'll be enough to get you through. But when we come up against a team or a nation who have got really good players, but also a culture of style of play, that seems to when we come unstuck. Be it Italy with their defensive-minded, like structured, rigid, organised defence first. Defence wins you trophy sort of attitude. And you got Spain who are like possession, suffocate you. Obviously, this Spain team had a little bit more than that, but you see what I mean? Like the way two-touch football. Whereas with England, there's no sort of real defined ethos or philosophy of football, and I think that needs. And if that changes, hopefully that will enable more coaches to come through to further implement that style throughout the league and also into the national team in the future as well. Hopefully.
Yeah, and again, I think that just comes down to funding from the FA from the top down, because I can't remember. I was just trying to remember whether it was Spain or the Netherlands, but one of them, I think it's either every club or every town has an FA appointed coach who's a full-time coach, and he goes around the different clubs, or it's like, different areas or whatever it is, like, but they all have like an actual full-time FA funded coach who goes around and like instills things, teaches the coaches how to coach them properly, but also coaches the players and kind of does the rounds that way. Whereas in England, it still feels like it's just whoever's dad's free who can on a Saturday to go and look after the who's free on a Wednesday evening to look after the kids while they play football, and who can turn up on a Sunday morning to watch them oof it and play on terrible ploughed fields. Like it is still that situation in England, whereas there isn't the futsal kind of community. There isn't there isn't a. Unfortunately, I mean, I know there's a lot of football cages in London and there's a few in Manchester, but still there's still not that kind of breeding ground of really good young like places for young people to play in good environments. Like to learn, Freuden, right? Yeah. But I mean, like to actually learn the skills rather than, like I say, just oofing it around in a field that could have potatoes in it. Like it feels like there isn't that. There's fewer and fewer places for people to play football. There's fewer and fewer, the 3G pitches to get on for an evening are prohibitively expensive. Like it's all there's no funding for it, and hopefully that changes going forward. Hopefully it changes like from whether it be from the FA, the government, or whatever it is. But that is what needs to change. Like it can't just be the 10 kids who have who are fortunate enough to get picked up by a local team and brought into an academy. It should be hundreds of kids have the opportunity to go and play football, and that's how you end up getting, even if you never make it as a footballer, you're just able to play sports as a child. Imagine, like that'd be amazing.
Yeah, weird that.
Yeah, but also bringing in that coach for the area, like have it funded. What can it cost to pay a coach for in a local area $40,000 a year? Like it's not going to be prohibitively expensive for the FA for the amount of money that they bring in, and whatever kind of they get from the leagues and stuff as well. Like you can afford to do that. You can afford to have the coaching set up. You can afford to have the facilities. It's just not being done. And obviously, if you do that, you're bringing more people into the coaching infrastructure. You're getting them into getting the badges and learning how to coach, and then maybe they go into management. Then maybe that's how you get the cycle of people coming up and through, rather than the lucky few that are able to get on these coaching courses. So anyway, preach over. Fund it. Like if you want successful stuff in the future, it's the same thing I say with referees. Fund it. Fund it properly, and it'll be better.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, hopefully,
and breathe.
One day, maybe the FA will change one day, but
Yeah.
we'll have to wait.
I
And
won't
see,
hold my breath.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say before we wrap up, just a couple of things I wanted to touch on. We'll do. I think obviously now the club football feels like it's pretty much nearly back. Like transfer window seems to be
football never ends, does it? Jesus Christ!
No, I know. It's relentless. I got back from holiday, so like what the final was on like the Sunday.
Yeah.
I got back Monday night, Tuesday morning, and then on Wednesday I was watching the second half of West Ham pre-season friendly. Right? Jesus, I need a break. Obviously, both our clubs have made some moves in the window. We'll do a full look at the transfer window as a whole and what teams need and what they need to get rid of and who needs to bring in and whatnot. But Man United have made some, dare I say it, interesting, positive signings to start off with Josh Xerxes and Lenny Yoro.
who's a very highly well thought of centre back.
I mean, we seem to be doing smart football decisions by smart footballing people, acting like a competent football club. This isn't Man United. What are we doing? Like, this is insane. We're selling players we want to get rid of. We're buying good young players who are kind of fit a system and have a, who will have a pathway to improve and grow as a squad. Like, you look at the squad now, like players under 25, we've got a really good core of players who are hopefully going to grow with each other, develop with each other. If we're going to bring in someone like a Delict as well, like just add to that and have a core of the spine of players that that can eventually kind of grow into a winning side. Like, it just seems like smart, like I say, smart signings, smart decisions that should have been happening for the last 15 years. That it's amazing how easy they've made it look. I think the bar's incredibly low. So So I think anything is an improvement. But just the fact that it's like, okay, we're moving on a few players that we don't want. Like, we're looking to move on players like Casemiro, and Sancho today has apparently agreed terms with PSG. Like, it's like, all right, we're getting rid of these players. Okay, we're bringing in like players like Ugarte and, like you say, Euro. Hopefully, bring in Delict as well to offer some strength at defense. It's just the right kinds of players at the right kind of prices. Building the core. Like I've said this before. United have been putting sticking plasters and final pieces on a castle that hasn't been built yet. Like, I can't remember whether I said it on the pod or it was on a stream. Like 2 years ago, when United signed Rafael Varane, Casemiro, and Cristiano Ronaldo within 6 months of each other, or whatever it was. Or was it even the same window? It might have been 2 windows. But we didn't have the team around. They didn't have the team to have those finishing touches on. If Arsenal buy those 3. 2 years ago, I think they win the title. I think Cristiano Ronaldo scores them 20-25 goals. Casemiro does the job that they needed in defensive midfield that Declan Rice has done this year. Granted, he plays a bit higher up, but you know what I mean. Like, he gives them that midfield stability, because that first year, United, he was exceptional. I think if they've got Rafael Varane on the books, they don't miss. What was his name?
Saliba.
Saliba, who got injured at the end of the season. They're kind of like plugging holes. Like, if you bring Varane in for 10 games at the end of the season, probably sees them over the line. Like that, they're the final pieces of the puzzle that you need to be doing. Same with Liverpool when they signed Van Dijk and Alisson, and I think Salah came in the season previous. It's like, there's your goal scorer, there's your defender, there's your world class goalkeeper. There you go, you're set. Like, these are the finishing pieces on a good squad, and it feels like we've gone. We aren't in the position to have finishing pieces right now. Like, we need to build the squad, and so we're building the squad, and it just makes sense. It's smart football decisions. I could see another 2, maybe 3 players coming in if if players leave, and it's just a lot of the business has already been done. One of the things I really like as well is it just seems to be like, it's almost Man City-esque, and I think the fact that we've got the old City CEO there is a part of that. It's amazing how we get rid of all the. It's amazing how we get rid of all the cranks and then all the leaks stop.
It's weird, that, isn't it?
But it's just like, we've signed this lad. Oh, okay. It's like, we're being linked to, for example, Ugarte. 6 hours later, personal teams have been agreed, just sorting out a fee. What? Like, this is supposed to drag on for 18 months. Do you not know where we're at? It's like, you're supposed to drag it on for 18 months, pay too much, and then they turn out to be a dickhead. That's how it's supposed to work at Man United.
It's worryingly competent. I don't know how I feel about it. Feels very worryingly competent for United.
Obviously, still a lot of work to do. Got to improve a lot on last year. But I think, like I say, it's a world apart from what we've been dealing with for the past 10, 12 years. So, yeah, long may it continue, and hopefully it just means we don't have as much of a batshit insane season where every other week it feels like we're releasing a statement and players are falling out, and we've told our like £80 million winger to go and train with the children, and like it's just like, just get rid of all that nonsense. Like, do a background check on people. Christ,
what you need is a boring season. So this is where I think United need 1 year where it's just a bit dull, just to sort of settle and stuff.
Yeah, we need a season where like we just get through most games, finish 4th or 5th. You know, maybe get a Champions League spot if we can get the 5th spot. Like, but like just have No bloody injuries, please, Christ. That's all I'm hoping for. Just again, a competent season. We'll see how it goes. I'm sure some shit will hit the fan at some point. How about yourselves though? You've been getting busy in the transfer window as well. I saw today as well. Is it Somerville? You seem to be getting linked with.
I'm not sure. I don't know how likely that is to come off, to be honest. But it's the sort of play we should be going for, definitely.
Well, it's the winger you've needed for about 5 years. So.
Yeah, but I think because Leeds have now binned off Archie Gray, they're no longer sort of in the precipice in terms of like needing to like sell a bunch of players. I'm not sure, to be honest. It changes. I heard they needed to raise like 100 million or whatever, but now that doesn't really seem to be the case. So I don't really know what's going on over there. But no, we're being active. I think we're going for the right types of players for like, which is very encouraging, and you can tell that we've got an actual one single person sort of leading the charge when it comes to recruitment now with our technical director. Like, obviously we spent big money on like a young upcoming Brazilian sort of wonder kid, which is not like us at all, so that's very exciting. Obviously we're not really going to see the best. I don't think we'll sort of know how good he's going to be in this first season. This will be like in 3 years time we'll know whether that's a good signing or not. But you know, bringing in Max Kilman, someone who's worked with the manager before, who's not Naya Forged, so he's, you know, not shit. So that's good. That's good. So yeah, I mean, 40 million, a little bit excessive, but again, if it's someone the manager wanted, and it shows that the club are willing to, you know, one, that there's there's collaboration, there's like agreement between the coach or the head coach and the recruitment team. So that's really positive. There's not this back and forth that we had last season between Moyes and the recruitment structure and stuff.
And as well, I think like he's been one of the better performing centre backs the past couple of years. And like you say, oh, it's 40 million, a lot of money. It's not really, like in the current.
Yeah, that's the thing.
In the current climate of transfer fees, I think for a proven Premier League player, is he 26? Like he's not ridiculously expensive, ridiculously old. I think that, you know, you've got a sell-on fee if he does want to move on. You're going to get his best years. I think 40 million's just par for the course, really.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like it's. I think if this was a defender from like Spain, no one would bat an eyelid. But because it's an English centre back, it's like, what, 40 million for an English player? No chance. But like I said, I think it's. And I said the key thing is he knows the manager well and knows how he wants to play, which I think gets, you know, there's been no bedding in period, which is really good. And yeah, really like some decent links, like John Duran seems to be the striker that we're going for from Villa, which concerns over his attitudes, but like he's 20, 21 years of age, knows the Premier League again. When he did play for Villa, looked good, got a really good finish on him, and hopefully that's someone we can sort of mould into a more consistent Premier League striker. And if he does do really well, sell on for a bit of profit later on down the line, which would be really good. And seeing that we've been linked with Aaron Wan-Bissaka today for 10 million quid, which I thought Wan-Bissaka, I think I've said on the pod before, one of the more improved players under Ten Hag since he's been there. And I think if it's true, because I think if I'm remembering it right, I think United are going after Mazraoui from Bayern, and as a result, they now really need to shift Wan-Bissaka. So now the asking price is around 10 million, which I think for someone like him, that's a price you definitely can't sniff out, I don't think. I think it kind of works out for both parties.
He's got 1 year on his deal, I think. In terms of the one-to-one defending, he's exceptional. Probably the best one-to-one defending fullback in the league. And it's probably not a probably, to be honest. I don't agree with the question marks over his ability to take the ball forward. He's not he's not a João Cancelo. He's not Trent. I think that's always the issue. Is like they go, well, he's not Cafu. Like, so he's obviously shit. It's like, well, no, he's not. He's he's a better defender than he is an attacker. But he's quick. He can dribble. He's an ex-winger. He can carry the ball.
Yeah.
He's not going to split the defensive line with the pass. He's not going to whip across to a back post with pinpoint accuracy. But he's far from useless going forward. He's a very good player. He's still in his peak. What is he, 25, 26? I think, 10 million for a position that you guys need to strengthen as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it'd be a great bit of business. And I think it'd be good for him as well. Like, he seems like a pretty shy, like pretty reserved guy. Like, I think him moving back to London would be good for him. Obviously, that's where he's from. And yeah, I've got nothing bad to say about the guy. He always puts in, like, he always gives all the effort when he plays. He's a very good footballer. I just think that United might be looking for a bit more of a foil for if Dallow's not available. Can we have someone who's a bit similar? can we have someone who's a bit more of a creator as a fullback? Just because we're looking to play a different kind of football, really. But yeah, I think it'd be a great bit of business for you, and yeah, it's a player that we need to move on and selling a price that works for everyone. Again, the selling prices that we've been getting for players has blown my mind, because usually what we do is we'll pay massively over the odds for players, and we seem to be paying a decent rate for 50 million quid for a wonder kid centre back, pretty much the going rate. 35 million for Zirkzee. Cool. That's a bit of a bargain, to be honest. Like, if he can develop into the player that everyone hopes he can. And we're selling Redacted for 30 million plus half of his next fee, and we're selling players for actual transfer fees. Because United selling players in the past would usually get, like, what did we sell the lad to Luton for last year? It was like 50 grand or something. Like,
million? Oh,
it was basically nothing.
Really
like
low.
we've just been shipping players out, like really good young players, for $1 million, $2 million. I think we got like 12 million for James Garner to Everton, which was an absolute steal. Like he's a Premier League proved. Like, he was great last year for Everton. Like proper Premier League quality players, but we usually just get our pants pulled down because, again, we had idiots dealing with it in the past, and we've actually got people in the building now who are going, 5 million for him? Oh, piss off! he's worth more than that. I just put the phone. I was like, come back with a serious offer if you want to buy one of our players. Like, so hopefully it's a good, if it does come off, hopefully it's a good deal for both teams all around.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if it's not, it seems we've got 3 right backs on the radar. It's either Mazraoui, who we're also going for, but I think that's more of a ploy to get the Wan-Bissaka price. That I don't know. But anyway, it's like Mazraoui, Wan-Bissaka, or Kyle Walker-Peters, which are all like, it's one of them. Any one of those 3 comes in, you go, great. Like, that's just a really good. That's an upgrade on Ben Johnson. It's an upgrade on Vladimir Soufal. Happy with either of that. And like I say, there just seems to be an actual plan in place rather than this sort of like, who's available, let's just get him in sort of thing that we've done in the past, which is really encouraging. I'm just really looking forward to next season and seeing how we get on under Lopetegui, because as I said, I've watched a couple pre-season games. Obviously, there's only so much you can take from it, but like, even just seeing us pass forward with a bit of purpose for our whole 90-minute game is just bloody lovely to watch.
Pass the ball forwards to someone in the same coloured shirt.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Honestly. It's like a new sport. I'm going to be the most easily pleased West Ham fan, I'll tell you.
We scored more than 1 goal today. It was a good day.
Yeah, it's like we lost 5-0, but we had 55% possession. Do you know what? It's all right with me. One thing I do just want to, before we wrap up, I just want to raise this point really quickly. I'm going to end on a bit of a dour note, but I'm going to have a bit of a moan about West Ham, unfortunately. I don't know how much you would have seen about this. I've been retweeting a little bit on Twitter, and I'm just bringing this up just for a bit of awareness, and there's a petition and stuff I want to point people towards when I sort of end on this. But West Ham, like a bunch of other Premier League clubs over the last sort of 12, 18 months or so, have recently announced they are scrapping concession prices for all non-season ticket holders. So that means no one over the age of 66. It was 65. They announced they didn't even announce it. They raised the age from 65 to 66 without telling anybody to qualify concession previously. Now they've scrapped it entirely, and that also means no one under the age of 21 is eligible for a concession ticket price, be it season ticket or match day price, which is, like I say, we've seen Wolves fans go through it. End of the season, Tottenham fans went through it last year. It's diabolical. It's disgusting. It's, without getting too like personal stuff, like me and my partner are planning on having kids in the future, and I've always liked the idea of being able to take my kids to West Ham like my dad did with me when I was younger. And the grim reality of it is I can't guarantee that I can even afford to do that when the time comes. And I know that there's a bunch of other parents who are in a very similar situation right now, and also people over the age of 66 who may have had to step away for a few years who want to get back into it because it would be cheaper now. It no longer is. So yeah, it's disgusting. It completely kills the idea of keeping on that tradition and keeping the fan base within families and stuff, and encouraging the next generation of kids to come through. Because right now, I wouldn't blame any parent who just says to their kids, "Do you know what? Fuck this. We're going to go watch Dagenham Redbridge for 10 quid from now on because we can't afford to do it. We can't afford to go over there anymore." But there's a real big campaign going on at the moment. Whether it will make much of a difference, I'd be lying if I said I was hopeful, but yeah, I'll tweet out the petition link on socials, wherever, if people do want to get involved. And even if it's not a club that you support, like, there's a good chance if you support a Premier League team, this will happen to your club as well later on down the line. So it's more about just making a bit of a statement saying this should not be tolerated in any way, shape, or form, really. So yeah,
football
that's
should
all
be
I've got to
accessible
say
to
on
everyone as much as possible, and we'll make sure we put a link to everything in the description. You can go follow that. Or like I say, you can go find our socials at United Frontcast everywhere, and obviously _Breezy FM if you want to find it straight from Breezy's account. But yeah, it's like you say, not, I wouldn't say it's a dour note to end on, but it's an important one. Like I say, football should be for the community and the people, and it should be accessible to everybody who wants to go. But as always, guys, that will do us for this time. We'll see you next time. We'll go a bit more into the in-depth transfer dealings of more of the Premier League sides as well, and maybe some big deals across Europe as well. I'm sure there'll be lots of things happening in the next week or so, especially with the Saudi window opening very soon as well. I think there's a lot of players being linked and some big young players going there as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how their league's going to develop and how that's going to affect the rest of European and world football as well. So as always, thank you for tuning in, guys. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, thumbs up, 5-star, whatever you can do wherever you're watching or listening. From me and Mr. Breezy, we'll see you next time. Take it easy.
Bye-bye.